Hello again, YouTube. It's Skylar. Welcome back to my face. I've been absent for quite a while as far as how many videos I've been making, and that's mostly due in part to the fact that lately I've been having a lot of dysphoria to deal with. And today I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about that because since switching locations on my job, I've encountered more people who don't seem to understand that dysphoria is what causes someone to be transgender. So I'm going to just elaborate a little bit more on that. Now, gender dysphoria is a very painful experience. It's very destructive, and it can really make someone utterly miserable if it's not treated. And the only treatment for gender dysphoria is to correct whatever's giving that person the dysphoria. So, i.e., transition genders. Now, this can take several different forms, as taking hormone replacement therapy, getting surgeries, etc., etc. But today I wanted to go a little bit more into detail on what gender dysphoria is specifically, because I've noticed a lot of times even people who don't have any issues with trans people don't even understand what gender dysphoria is. And it's really hard to explain to someone that hasn't experienced it. And the only people that experience gender dysphoria are transgender people. So it's kind of a closed bubble in experience, but it is a very detrimental thing. And through transitioning, gender dysphoria does go away over time, but it never completely goes away. So it diminishes with transitioning, but even throughout transition and sometimes even afterwards, a trans person can still experience some level of dysphoria, and that'll carry through for the rest of their life, unfortunately. Typically, what I try to explain to sort of, if people could get an understanding of what it's like to have gender dysphoria, is to imagine waking up and having all of the wrong things and looking like the opposite gender. And immediately, that level of panic and anxiety is what gender dysphoria is. So when a transgender person looks into a mirror and they see things that are atypical of the gender that they identify as, that causes them to have dysphoria. For example, one of the things that I've always had dysphoria about the most is my face. Now, even though I'm almost a year now onto my hormone replacement therapy, there are still things that give me dysphoria because I haven't gotten to that point yet. So for instance, my jawline, well, a lot of people say I look fine. For me, when I look in the mirror, I see something incongruent with my gender identity. And that's because women typically have a more slender, pointy chin and jawline. And that's the biggest thing that I've been trying to explain recently to people, is that people transition not to look better, they transition to get rid of the dysphoria. So when a trans person gets a surgery or procedure done, or whatever the case may be, they're doing it to alleviate the gender dysphoria, because once that treatment is successful, the dysphoria in whatever area of their person's image is bothering them so much goes away, and then instead of having to have this overwhelming, looming depression and anxiety, they can just go about their day and live their life like everybody else. So it's really hard because I have a lot of times people that are accepting of me for being trans, but tell me that they don't agree with me being trans, which for me is kind of doesn't make any sense because gender dysphoria is a medical condition. To say that you don't agree with someone's transition for them being transgender, in my mind, would be the same thing as saying I don't agree with diabetic people taking insulin. But that's what treats them. That's what makes them better. If you don't agree with a treatment, then they're just going to suffer. They're not going to get better. So you're disagreeing with them getting better. See, for me, that doesn't make any sense. And I think it comes back to the fact that the majority of society still thinks that being transgender is a personal decision and not one that's made out of necessity, which always baffles me because what rational person, what rational sane person would intentionally want to spend tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, completely upheave their life, destroy all their social relations, probably lose their job, probably have to move, and come with a lot of health side effects in the future for the benefit of there is not really any benefit. Transitioning from male to female or female to male comes with no intrinsic benefit. There is no benefit to being male or female. The only motivation for transitioning gender is to get rid of the dysphoria. Once the dysphoria is gone, the person can live their life like anybody else, aside from the stigma and all that. But with that said, what I was going back to my point, what rational person would really choose to do something like that? I don't choose to make my life really, really, really hard. I didn't choose to be ostracized. I had to do it for my health, for my mental health. And the pros and cons of it, obviously having dysphoria, getting rid of the dysphoria was more of a motivator than not being perceived unnormal by society. So it just goes back to something I said a while in the videos prior, that it all comes down to more education. I feel as though the more educated people in the general public become on the issue of transgender, more specifically gender dysphoria is what causes people to be transgender, then people will become more understanding and more empathetic towards a trans person, because they'll understand that it's not something that they can control, and that by transitioning is pretty much the only way that they could ever live a normal life without having severe anxiety, depression, and most likely leading to attempts at suicide, which, as of right now, as sad as I am to say it, the suicide rate for transgender individuals is 41%, which means 4 out of 10 transgender people will have attempted or committed suicide at some point in their life. And that's a really horrible number. Imagine if that was in any other statistic. I mean, if the common cold killed 4 out of 10 people, the CDC would declare a state of emergency, But when it comes to being transgender, somehow that number gets overlooked because people are like, well, it's trans people. Well, that's wrong. That's not right. We need to turn that around. Anytime there's a group of anyone, no, it doesn't matter who they are or what group they belong to. If any group is committing suicide on a rate of 40% percent or more, that should be like raising national emergency. Like that's a crisis. But without rambling on too much, because I'm about to go over my time here, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.